Alrighty. Welcome to Tuesday, May 26, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting. In the absence of our Chair, Selectman Wood, who will be a little late this morning, I will begin the meeting. If you would all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Kathy, would you be so kind as to approve the warrants?
I'll make a motion for payroll warrant 20-47 for $163,650.24.
I'll second that.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Terrific, all those in favor?
Yes.
I'll make a motion for bill warrant 20-47 in the amount of $594,473.10. And it's broken down as follows. Town, $129,285.46. What's
Water sewer.
Sorry, water sewer.
Water sewer, $56,205.60. Payroll withholding, $23,541.94. Light bills, $338,004.96. Grants and revolving, $47,435.14.
May I just make one quick comment? So the grants and revolving of that 47,000, 45,000 and change is the summer rec program that we refunded last week, or this week. So anyone who signed up for the summer rec program will get their checks back starting Thursday.
I'll second the motion for passage.
Any further discussion? Seeing as there's none, all those in favor?
Yes.
Terrific. Okay, we'll continue our meeting with the discussion, possible vote on the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you again, Ms. Walsh and
Deb.
Deb,
Ms.
for
Deb.
joining us this evening. Maybe you can fill us in on anything that's happened in the last
Well,
week to begin with?
The numbers were up, and it was a bit of a concern last week, but now the numbers are down. Okay, so quarantine, last week we had 10 homes. Now we're down to 7.
Good.
So this is good. And then as far as positive cases go, we have had 1 in almost a week. It'll be a week tomorrow.
Okay.
So this is good. Good news. And I was looking at statistics last night, and Essex County and Massachusetts, all the cases are down.
Great.
I mean, it's going in the right direction.
Good.
It's better than going up like it was. So just keep our prayers going. I'd just like to remind people that just because we're seeing, better numbers, we still need to maintain our social distancing and wearing masks, when we're in a crowd. It's really important. We can't let our guard down.
Right.
We really can't. So.
Ed, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Happy?
No, I mean, I think we're going in the right direction, which is what we've all been working towards. I see people that are meeting with social distance outside with their family members. I feel like that's good, someone's visiting, they're seated apart, 6 feet. I see people who walk or run, they cross the street, some of them have a mask on. The ones that don't always cross away from me. I feel like we're doing everything we can to keep this number going down. So this is good. It's working. It's working. It's very boring, but it is working, and that's the most important part, I think, of the whole process, is to just keep our social responsibility up there, make sure we're washing our hands a lot, keeping social distance. I see some kids out riding their bicycles. Again, they're kind of far apart. You know, they're not right next to each other, and a lot of them have a face mask around the neck, you know, in case they need to put it on. So I really feel like the town is pulling together on this and doing everything we ask for of them. And so telling them that we're heading in the right direction should hopefully encourage us to keep going.
It is very encouraging.
Yes.
So I just want to say I want everybody to be patient because we've been having phone calls, like when can the camps open, when can different places open, and we, the Board of Health, can't change what the governor has set out. It's got to go according to their phases.
Right, so if I may, because I put together today some recommendations, knowing that you guys would be here based on the governor's phased plan, because I'm getting inundated with calls about the parks and the boat ramp. So according to the governor's plan, in phase 1, you could open some outdoor activities, which I caution the board, because if you can't open everything, we can't be taking down signs. However, in phase 2, they are recommending that you can open campgrounds, playgrounds, spray decks, pools, all athletic fields and courts with guidelines, and youth sports in limited fashion. And then phase 3, you can open additional services with youth sports, and then phase 4 is full resumption of all outdoor activities.
Right.
So what I would recommend, but again, it's gonna be based on you all, because the Board of Health is the enforcing agency, and I don't know, I know you're limited with hours in your department, so, I mean, I would recommend that we open up the areas for walking only at this point, still do not open the parking lots, keep everything closed off, with the expectation that when phase 2 begins on June 8th, if it's still June 8th, that we open up all the parks following whatever guidelines the state puts out. Again, I don't know what those are, they have not released those. I know one of the initial ones was we needed to have sanitizing stations, which they're on back order everywhere. I
Right.
can't find them, we can't order the parts, we can't order the sanitizing spray. And then that would allow us to open sort of the parks and the boat ramp as of June 8th. I was going to I am recommending that for June 8th, we bring back the public work departments to the 4-day work week. Rennie's anxious to get his crew back to work. I talked to Colin today, he would like to get his crew back to work. As far as office work, the state is still pushing remote work as long as possible, but I would say we do that sort of mid-phase 2, tentatively June 22nd. Allow employees to continue to work remotely until then and bring the town hall employees back to work, with still no Monday evening hours and no Fridays, provided that there's one person per office or desks at least 12 feet apart, because we have 2 situations that desks are much closer than, they're probably 8 feet apart, which is pushing the restrictions of 6 feet. So I think in those situations, we either will need to stagger the employees, or we have one, the Council on Aging has 2 offices, they could move one of their employees into the other office so that they're distanced enough. We would still need to deal with any parents who have childcare issues, because they haven't resumed any childcare situations yet. I would then recommend that phase 3, which is on or about June 29th, if everything follows the 3-week limit, we would return the library employees to work. And then when phase 4 starts, we would open all the buildings to the public. We cannot meet the criteria. We do fall under the 25% rule that the state has right now, and it's based on your building capacity. So our capacity here is 99 people. We cannot exceed 24 people in this building until those guidelines change. Even when it comes to the election, we cannot exceed 24 people in this building. So that's why I had said to you previously that we can't have employees in work on election day. They cannot be here because we're adding to the number of people in that 25% rule. We would allow people to be spaced out enough throughout the building so that Beth can have only so many people in here voting while we have some people waiting, and then the rest of the people outside if people want to come in and vote in person. So that's what I would say to you and you all to get your thoughts. I mean, mostly on the park side and the recreational area, because it's going to fall on your shoulders.
I think they should be allowed to have the parks for the open walking and everything. Just because it's, it's getting nicer outside, being inside doesn't help immunities or anything. They need to be out in the fresh air, and I think Claire kind of agrees with that too, that they should be out more so than being stuffed inside a house.
Sunshine and fresh air, it's
Yeah,
healthy.
correct, because the vitamin D too, even if you're only out for a short period of time, that's also been something that they say does help.
Right, but I know, like, currently, under phase one, like, basketball courts can be open, but there can be no pickup games, no
Correct.
one-on-one. Like,
Correct.
again, that would fall on you all to enforce that if there are pickup games. Like, I don't know how you want to handle those types of things.
We would,
So is it too soon? Because I keep telling people, we just don't have the resources to open up recreational areas fully and then police the individual
we
sections.
would have
We
to
don't
have,
have that.
the GPD would have to help us, because we, even in a group, we can't go and tell a group not to be there. They're not gonna, we have no backup, we don't have anything, you know, if they weren't listening, or if they got out of, you know,
Right.
unruly or something.
Right, so maybe that's something, because I know Joan was against GPD. She wanted the Board of Health to be the sole enforcement agent, because the chief reached out several times, and she did not want them assisting with enforcement. So maybe that's something we plan next Monday. I see if the chief can come in, or the lieutenant, to have that conversation, because I've talked to them about enforcement, and they don't have the capability if we need to start looking at different sections of recreational areas to enforce either.
Right, but if they drive right around here, and if they drive down into the Pines, they'll see, you know, if there's things going on there. Any of the athletic fields, it tells you right on here that there's no pickup games,
Right.
organized games, anything like that.
Right. So, but that's why I almost feel like we should wait, like, we can allow everything to be open for walking, but not open the parks
Right.
formally until phase two, when at least those restrictions are a little more flexible. And then they're not enforcing quite as much of, you know, because phase two, you can open playgrounds, because phase one,
Right.
you can't open playgrounds. So I think it might be a little easier to fully open things on phase two and deal with the enforcement than trying to do it now.
Right.
Where phase two, hopefully if we continue the trend we're at, it will be June 8th, which is, you know, a week and a half. 2 weeks almost.
I know. So this, just to be clear, so we're saying that walking on the green space in the park, okay.
That's what I
Anything
would
else?
say, yes.
Yeah,
But not
that's
open-
clear,
But
and
not
that's-
open the parking lots yet.
Right, but
Right.
that's very clear and very simple. I mean, they could obviously park up here and walk down the hill, right? That's okay?
Yep. I mean,
Okay.
that's what I'm recommending to you
Okay.
all, that we
No,
allow
that's
recreational spaces for walking
simple. That's simple.
currently.
How about, the thing I was wondering about, how do we dovetail with the opening of businesses? Is that all under the governor's decrees, or do we have to make any?
So again, what we talked about last week, you can be more restrictive than the governor.
Correct,
But
okay.
his phased opening, so, you know, like, you can't open up nail salons in town where he hasn't opened them yet under his phase.
Right.
But if you wanted to put more restrictions on hair salons, you could make it more restrictive.
Okay, so,
But you can't lighten up his
right, but so
phases.
they're waiting for phase two.
Well, the playgrounds and things are phase, most of the, so under phase two, it's playgrounds, all athletic fields and courts with guidelines.
What
They have
about-
not released the guidelines. And youth sports in limited fashion. So I think there's no practice, there's certain things you can
No,
do under
I
youth
understand the
sports.
recreation. I'm wondering, how do our businesses know? I've read a few things online in the paper where
Oh, there's-
businesses are saying, they don't know what the rules are here right now. and
Oh,
I
it's
think-
very specific. If
Okay.
they go on the reopening plan, it is very specific,
what
what business
phase-
can open and what business cannot
What
open.
phase can they have outside eating on in this one?
So currently, it looks like it's planned for phase 2.5,
That's,
I think, let me see.
I think it starts June 8th for outdoor seating and everything.
Yes, correct, you're right. So potentially phase two, restrictions of
Phase
some
2.5.
capacity and limitations. So retail, restaurants, but they're still working on procedures for opening with restaurants, lodging, and additional personal services like nail salons and day spas are currently under phase two.
Right. And
Okay.
I do feel that they're not putting those guidelines up yet, because if they see the guidelines up,
Right.
then they're gonna say, oh, we can do this now. So they're only up till May 25th, I believe, right?
Correct, correct. So next Monday, they have the,
They'll be
oh, no,
start-
yesterday, that was yesterday.
Right, so then-
Yes.
So they'll be putting new ones up for starting, because there are a few going in, I think, into effect June 1st.
I don't,
Well, for Boston there
oh,
is.
June
for the-
1st
for-
is
for the
office space.
offices,
Yeah, so
right.
they gave Boston the extra time to plan office space.
Right.
I think that's the only thing opening on June 1st.
Right, I
And
think
then
so,
phase
too.
two should begin, I mean, the numbers have been steadily low for the last few days. So as long as it continues that trend, phase two should be June 8th, would be the start of phase two.
Right,
So that was sort of my recommendation to you all and you, or to get your input on that, to sort of slowly reopen Groveland.
baby steps.
Parks, Recreation, to Public Works, Town Hall, Library. I mean, Library is still, even Phase 3 is kind of pushing it, because Library, according to the conversations I've had, they're like the last thing on the governor's. You know, they can open, they can do curbside currently, so Library could have curbside service. But those types of places, museums and things like that, they're not, they're Phase 3 vigilant, and it's a possibility of Phase 3, because they can attract larger groups of people. So I guess, what are your thoughts on all that?
Like I said, I agree with the being able to open for the walking.
For walking. We're talking about just letting people walk on the green space, but not drive down and park inside the parks.
So I was proposing that as of tomorrow, when I put the call out, that people can use recreation areas for walking. We're not gonna open parking lots yet. But then when Phase 2 begins on June 8th, you know, tentatively, based on whatever the guidelines are going to be, then we could, because all athletic fields and parks and playgrounds are scheduled to open with Phase 2, that on June 8th, on or about, we would open those areas, including the boat ramp, and just see what we can do as far as the guidelines. One of the early guidelines is we need sanitizing stations, which you can't find that stuff anywhere right now. So if that's one of the requirements for playgrounds, then we wouldn't be able to open the playground because we don't have that, although we have bathrooms right there. So we have to see more specifically what
Right.
the guidelines, but at that same time, I would recommend bringing back Public Works employees on the 4-day, still just the Monday through Thursday schedule. And then mid-Phase 2, bring back the Town Hall employees on a 4-day schedule. And then Phase 3, the library employees. And then Phase 4, reopen everything to the public with sort of under the new normal, if you will. So that's what I'm proposing.
So this is assuming that through each stage and each opening, that things are happening accordingly.
Right, so that's why I want to base it more on the phase and not necessarily the date, because, you know, Phase 2 right now would be June 8th, as long as it continues on this path. But if something happens and they push Phase 2 out another week, then we'd be looking at June 15th. So, but I would like to give residents some idea of what the plan is. And again, it can be tentative, because we don't know as things are changing, as guidelines are coming out. But I want to start making employees aware of when they're expected to return to the office, when residents should be expected to be able to, you know, people calling from the boat ramp all the time. So just so we can give some expectations of what, you know, we're planning based on the governor's.
I think from my perspective, as long as it's a outline and not a definitive schedule, then it's okay, because honestly, this could go either way at any moment, right? It could be less strict as we move forward, or it could be go back and be more strict, because we're seeing a spike and people aren't really doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So, as long as it's just an outline, I mean, from my perspective, as long as it's just an outline and kind of guidance, then that's good, but I don't want to put any specific dates on things where this is when you're going to be able to go and use this.
Right, but I think as far as, which I agree to that, but I think, like with the employees, you know, Rennie wants to get his crew back because he has paving to do. So
Right.
we're looking at June 8th to bring the Public Works guys back. They'll all be distanced, they'll have their own equipment, he can keep them all separate, but at least I can give them a date that this is when you're all expected to return to work. You know, again, if something changes between now and June 8th, we can always change that. But I don't want to say on June 5th, like, hey, you have to report to work on Monday.
Right, you want to have
So
those.
I'd like to at least give people some time to make arrangements if there's childcare issues or.
I would
just
say
plan.
tentatively, you're expected to be back June 8th. That could move back to June 15th.
Yeah, I mean, I can give it as a tentative, but
Yeah.
I'd like to, just for the employees, I'd like to give a date specific. Whereas the recreational stuff and things, we should tie it to the phase, because it is tied to the phases.
Right.
Yeah, you can make it easy. You can just say your return will be expected no earlier than
Yeah, yeah.
June 8th. This way they know it could be happen after that, but won't happen any earlier than that. I guess my big concern is the nice weather.
That is nice.
You see it all over the TV. The nice weather brings everybody out, and not a lot of people. Not as many. You're never going to get 100% participation, right? We all know that. But I think it's going to be more difficult as the warmer and nicer weather comes out to maintain that social distancing and you know, old habits die hard. We see somebody, we recognize, haven't seen in a long time, what's your first impulse, right? You wanna go up and give them a hug, right? And I worry that some of the things that we practiced so diligently in the past several months will just fall by the wayside very rapidly just because of old habits. And we see another spike, and then we're into, now we're locked in for the nice weather instead of, during the winter and lousy spring. I guess that's my biggest concern. The boat ramp is another thing, because social distancing is almost, it's a thing on a boat. You can't really, the folks on the boat, you really can't get close to anybody else. I mean, you're on the water. It's not like you can pull up to a parking lot on the water and, have a margarita with your friends. It's a little more difficult. So I feel for the boaters. I'm not a boater myself, but I feel for them, because that's a great outdoor activity where you can absolutely social distance, have a good time, enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the fresh air. But right now, we've kind of restricted their access to it.
Right, but they can launch somewhere else. I mean, if people want a boat, they can go anywhere else to launch that's open. We just happen to be one of the ones that has it in the middle of a recreational area.
Yeah, we happen to be one of the best ones, too. That's the unfortunate part. I mean, let's face it.
Well, we're the cheapest, that's why people want to launch
Yeah,
it.
well,
They
we're
don't want to go across the river where he's charging them 5 times as much as what we charge.
we're the best, too. Groveland is
It's a
the
good
best,
ramp.
let's face it.
It is, it's a good ramp.
So,
I do have a question about, and again, this is just because we have time now, looking at this, we're not flipping the switch on. It's like we said in the beginning, it's not gonna be like everything off and everything on. It's gonna be measured steps. For the offices that do eventually deal with the public, are we talking about some kind of shielding, for moving forward? Are we able to do that?
so we have,
Good.
so Beth and I purchased portable plexiglass partitions that she'll use for the poll workers, we'll probably use for town meeting check-in, and then eventually after that, we'll put them on the counters.
Yes.
Um,
Good.
But still, I mean, that's why the governor's not ready to even allow sort of full, they consider town hall business the same as like retail. And until you can open up the retail stores for regular business, we can't open up here to regular business.
I
So,
agree, I agree.
But when that time comes, we've purchased, it's cleaning supplies we can't find. We've purchased hand sanitizer, I have masks, I have face shields, we have the partitions, we have, I bought 4 gallons of hand sanitizer. So we've got those things covered. We have some of our Lysol and our Clorox bleach, but what we have is what we have. We can't get any more currently. So once we open, there's requirements for cleaning and things like that. So depending on where we fall, and if it is sort of a phase 4, we're looking at the end of July if all 3 weeks fall consistently. Hopefully by then, things will be back, products will be available, we'll be able to provide some safe customer service.
Good.
I mean, that's the plan.
Ed, do you have any?
No, I agree with Bill. I don't see what the big deal is about the boat ramp. You launch the boat, you're out in the middle of the river, you take it down to the ocean. You're not within 6 feet of anybody. If you're within 6 feet, that's close. Yeah, even when launching the boat, nobody gets within 6 feet. Now and I know you gotta go through the park, but I don't see the problem if they're going down to the boat ramp.
Well, I just disagree. The minute we take that barricade down, the park is gonna be a free-for-all. The Pines is gonna be packed. The minute those barricades come down, we can't stop people and tell them they can only go to the boat ramp, and that's the problem we have. If you can come up with another way that we can allow traffic only to the boat ramp, I'm all for it. But that barricade is, every day, people are driving down there, they turn around, they bypass the park closed sign until they hit the barricade, and then they turn around and go back out. So that's the problem we have with enforcement. We don't have enough people to stick someone down there all day and allow only cars for the boat ramp to go through. That's where I struggle.
And the same thing with the Little League parks. If you've got 3 kids on the baseball field, they're not within 20 feet of one another. You got somebody at bat, somebody pitching, and you got someone in the outfield. That doesn't seem to be a problem. These kids have got to get outside. you gotta get them away from their computers and get them out and get some exercise.
Right, well, the athletic fields and courts are phase two anyways, that was my recommendation. Is the boat ramp, the athletic fields and all that opens at phase two with the guidelines that will come out from the governor's office.
And I can understand the playground area, because that can't be, you can't sanitize that when the kids are in there. That makes sense. But the basketball courts, the baseball fields, the kids have gotta get some exercise.
Right, under the governor's plan, basketball courts are a no until at least phase two, because you're sharing a basketball. Same thing with like baseball, you're fielding the ball, you're catching, they don't want any shared equipment.
Yep.
So that's part of the problem currently. That's why I keep saying, if we open parts of it, we can't stop people, like even back in the beginning when it was like, oh, a father and son want to play ball. That basketball court was packed with kids, and that's what we just have we have trouble enforcing. They're limited with staff, the police are limited with staff. If there was a miracle solution to have somebody in all these parks policing it all the time, but that's why phase two would be the boat ramp, the parks, and we'll see what the governor issues for the guidelines. But they can't open before then anyways, under his phased plan.
That's June 8th,
Phase two, technically, it should be June 8th.
which is
Not that
2.5 weeks.
No, less than 2 weeks.
Less
It would have
than
been 2
2
weeks from yesterday.
Yep.
Good, then.
So, we're on the right path, and I guess my only question is, if we're unable to get the cleaning supplies, I know that you try to get, would that just mean the bathrooms would have to stay closed, or are those cleaning supplies? We're
No
not gonna clean,
counters.
but we're not gonna clean basketball nets, right? It's not for any of that stuff.
Correct.
Okay,
No, the cleaning stuff is for the inside town hall, the library.
Okay.
Police dispatch, and we have to open the things up to the public where people would be at the counters and things like that.
Okay.
We have to be able to clean those throughout the
right, so
day.
the cleaning supplies are just for this. So phase two, heading towards that phase two is just dependent on everything still continuing to go in a positive direction.
Yes, and
Okay.
again,
Good.
the possible phase two requirement with playgrounds was sanitizing stations. That I
We don't
cannot
have that.
find anywhere.
we won't
So if
have
that is still a requirement,
we
we would
just
not
tape
be
off
able to
the
open the
playground.
playground.
Right,
Um,
so
and
how
it
do we do
still may
that, where
be-
we have that
Well,
whole
you just put
complex?
the caution tape around it like a
Right.
Christmas tree,
And it still
right?
may be, they come out with, at basketball courts, you need those, I don't know. So depending on where they say we need sanitizing stations,
Oh, okay, so,
we cannot get those supplies anywhere.
so we don't know what that's gonna be for
We do not
yet.
know the guidelines for phase
Thank you.
two. They just
Okay.
keep saying, even, they kept promising
Okay.
us
I
summer
understand.
programs by May 15th. They just said today on my call, hopefully by the end of the week. They have not released summer program guidelines yet, because they are trying to see, as things open, what they need to do, how they need to distance,
Okay.
and they know that the supplies are limited, so they don't want to say things can open tomorrow when no one can get the stuff that is needed
Right.
to open those things.
Okay.
So they're not releasing guidelines until the last minute, until they have to release the guidelines.
I understand, thank
So
you.
it's quite a pickle to be in, where things want to loosen up, but you have to have these supplies in order to actually meet those kind of guidelines. And we definitely don't want to do it too early or too wide, and then have to revert back to a lockdown like we've seen the last couple of months. I mean,
Right.
that's the last thing we want to do.
Right.
So I know people are frustrated and they're getting antsy and they're having this kind of solitary confinement where, they're going crazy. And I don't blame them. I mean, I don't want to be home all the time either. I want to be able to go out, but taking the wrong approach and the too quick approaches, I think, is going to be more devastating for people. So I think better the incremental process, little steps at a time. Let's make sure everybody still understands what they're supposed to do. That doesn't mean, we're in phase two, go out and start a rugby team and start tackling people all day. There's still gonna be masks, there's still gonna be social distancing, there's just, people still gotta be vigilant on what they're doing.
To Selectman Watson's point, I would love to be able to take my son down to the Pines with 50 balls in a bucket and let him hit, just me and him. And it's probably something that can be done very safely. But in order to set the proper example, both him and I, both my sons and I have had to bite the bullet. I guess what I'm trying to say is we're human. We're gonna make mistakes. All right, we're not, I will speak for myself, I'm not God. And if God was on the ballot, I'd have voted for him. But if we make a mistake, if I make a mistake, I hope it's a mistake that saves a life and not a mistake that takes a life. So if I have to wait till June 8th to take my boy down to the park, and maybe it saves a life, to me, it's worth it. It's another 13 days. We've gone this far. We can go another 13 days. And I guess that's where we should stand. I mean, if we're gonna make a mistake, I hate to make it on the wrong side of history, you know, and it is tough. It's tough on everybody. It is. It hasn't been easy. No one asked for this, for certain. This was something that was thrust upon us, and now we have to deal with it. This is the hand we were dealt, and now we've got to play it the best we can. So if we could just ask everybody, I guess we're kind of in agreement to wait another 13 days and keep our fingers crossed that things continue to trend in the right directions. On June 8th, we can take down those Jersey barriers. We can maybe play a little catch. We can launch a couple of boats. We can catch a couple of fish. And maybe we can start to look back towards some semblance of normalcy in our lives. I just know what else to say other than that.
Well, as a case in point, people don't understand how father, son, neighbor can go out in their backyard, they can throw the baseball around, they can hit the ball, and that's okay. But yet, when they go down the street to the baseball field, now they can't do it. You can't, you're not sanitizing the ball, even a basketball, if you're shooting baskets in the yard, you're not sanitizing it. Same people are doing it, but yet when you go into the public park, same people playing, but now they can't do it because they're in the public park, but they can in their own backyard. It's not getting sanitized in either location. And that's what doesn't make, that's the part that doesn't make sense.
That's
Why
the
a
part that
father-
hurts.
Father and kid can go in his backyard, but he can't go down the street to the ball field. They're the only ones there doing the exact same thing.
I know.
That doesn't make sense.
Try and explain that to a 13-year-old.
Try to explain that to some of the parents. They don't understand it either, not the kids, the parents.
I can empathize with them. I can certainly empathize with them. But again, you know, I think if we make a mistake, if any mistakes are made, we should make it so that a life is saved and not a life is tragically ended. And if we have to wait 13 more days after what we've been through, I don't think that's a lot to ask. You know, if 13 more days is all it takes to get us over that hump, you know,
Well, and we meet weekly, so should something change on next Monday, you can make that decision, but, I mean, we can't open them anyways until phase 2 under the governor's plan, so, maybe by next week we'll have the guidelines. I don't know, but maybe.
Do we need a motion on this meeting now, this, allow people to use the green space to walk around? Do we need a motion for that? Because we've closed the parks to that before. We said nobody goes in. And the recommendation is that if somebody wants to park up here and walk down with their kids and walk around, that's okay.
They can walk, but they can't, no
They
parking.
can't use the equipment,
Right.
correct.
Right, just have to be able to walk. So
Yeah,
So to the point of the fields and a father, son in the backyard, so I'm in my backyard, I play catch with my son, right? Just the two of us.
yeah, I get the little balls and, you know. I
Throw
do
the
best
football
we can.
around, you know, whatever. The problem becomes if I go down to the field and I start throwing it around with my son, and then a couple other kids come down there, and a couple other fathers and sons go down there, now you got a group.
Mhm.
And that's what we don't want. So that's the difference between tossing the ball around in your backyard with your kid, and then going down to a field and then inviting others to come down there, either intentionally or unintentionally, and then you have a group of people.
Well, and they don't own the fields.
Right.
It's municipal owned, and it falls under the guidelines of phase 2, so that's what the explanation, you can go out in your backyard and do anything you want. You can go out in your backyard and have a party with 10 people if you want, and not socially distant. You're not supposed to, but it's your private property, and I know people are doing it, so.
Yeah.
But when it comes to our fields and our municipal space, we are required to follow the phased approach of the governor.
Yeah.
And the phased approach is phase 2,
Do we
at a
do-
minimum.
Do we take down the sign that says park closed if we're gonna allow them to walk? And then, you know, what does that connotate to the average person that drives by and says, oh, sign is gone?
I mean, I would say no. I would say we put it out in the call, we put it on our statement that people can walk. I let the police know that people can use the green space to walk,
Right.
and they should not be enforcing that.
I would still leave those Jersey barriers up and leave
Yeah.
it park closed, it's for walking only.
Do we need a motion, or?
I would recommend a motion, either you motion on just that, or you sort of make a motion on the tentative plan. Either way, whatever
The
you feel
tentative
comfortable.
plan is like all over the place.
Yeah, I would say just the
Not all over the
walking,
place,
make a
it's just
motion
a
on
full
that.
Well-
plan of the next 2 months.
Well, I'd rather get more of the details of it, than,
Can we make a motion to revisit this at next Monday's meeting?
We can
Because
make a
then time,
motion.
Well, you revisit it every Monday, so you
Yeah.
can make a motion.
well, I'll make a motion that passive recreation, walking around the parks is okay right now. Just don't use any of the athletic equipment or fields. And the barricades stay up.
Still use a mask.
Yeah, social distance, all of that, yeah.
All right, do I have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
We'll revisit this in
Next.
6 days' time.
No?
Well,
All those in
that's fine.
favor?
Thank-
All right.
Thanks. And now you're going to talk about the town election, so I'm going to recuse myself again.
Sure.
Sure.
So moving on to the hours.
And
for
actually, I'm gonna give you the microphone to just stay there, so that we don't,
Violate any social distancing.
Hours for town elections.
Oh, while we're at it, before we move on to that, when it comes to quarantining, right? A home is quarantined, you've received notification from the state that there's a case, positive case, COVID-19 in this particular household. At that point, are any rules, regulations, requirements, mandates, however you want to call it, issued to that particular household saying, okay, someone in your household tested positive, therefore you need to follow A, B, C, D, whether it's 3 recommendations, 10 recommendations, 25 recommendations. Is there anything like that in writing that exists that, that you physically?
I've asked many people who've been on quarantine if when they got their testing done, if they received any information about quarantining. Some of them have, some of them haven't, okay? Some of them have mixed ideas as to how it's supposed to go. So I always go over, what they have to do. And, if they've tested, say, on the 20th, okay, but they've been in the house 2 days before that, okay, so, you can safely say if they're symptomatic 2 days before the test, they could be okay in the whole 14 days going from the time they became symptomatic and if they self-quarantined, okay? The thing that bothers me about the testing and not testing with some employers, even medical employers, they're not retesting people, or they're trying to get out of it. Should put it that way. But if you can really make a case with your personal physician, then you can probably get it done without too much ado. But it's, it's a little tricky in how it's being done.
It sounds like
So-
there's no consistency on what the information, the sharing of information is. I would suggest you put something in writing that's agreed upon by your whole board and by us and say, these are the expectations if you're tested positive and you're under quarantine. That way, there's no ambiguity, there's no questioning, there's no, I didn't know. This is what's expected.
There's probably something online from the state. I
Well,
would-
from
I would
CDC is
think.
what they're all going by, the CDC
Well,
guidelines.
that changes by the hour.
Well, not as far as the quarantines goes, though. It's typically 14 days.
It is 14 days.
Right,
and
but as
then-
we've
and
talked
then
about before,
72
that's-
hours, 72, 72 hours or 3 days after they come off of, before they can go back to work. If they haven't been retested, okay, and they're off their quarantine, then they have to be 3 days without symptoms.
But as we've seen before, the understanding of the expectations hasn't always been followed, right? One house
No,
is doing one
and,
thing, one
you
house
know,
is doing
can-
another,
can
one person's
you-
doing this, one person's doing that. If we have
But even if we tell them, okay, I guess, Mike, I get what you're saying, but you can tell them as much as you want.
You
You're still
can't
gonna,
enforce
you can't
this
force it.
with
They're gonna do
everyone.
what they wanna do no matter what you've told them. It's
well, at
just-
least if we had a printout, you could say you were made aware of
But you
this.
could.
I understand we can't do anything to it, we can't have a Gestapo go out there and say, you're out of compliance, get in the van, we're taking you to prison. That'd make things a lot easier for us, but we can't do that. I'm just trying to figure out a way to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because it seems like there's a lot of ambiguity of the information that we're dealing with.
I don't think so. Not real, I don't think so.
I don't know, I spoke to someone that should have come off quarantine, like, within the last couple of days, and she's still sick. So she's not coming off, she can't go back to work, so she's stuck in the house until 3 days of no symptoms.
Right.
And
Some of it is mixed messaging, I think, and some of it is just, the willingness of the person to do the right thing, and you can't, right now, there's no way to mandate compliance, and that's always the biggest problem.
You can't prevent people who are positive from going out of their house.
No.
They're supposed to be on quarantine,
Right.
but they're down the store. How are you gonna control it? It's difficult. I'm not trying to make excuses, but it's
You don't have
really,
to make
it's
excuses.
a tough situation.
right, I mean, you have zero enforcement authority, right? I mean, you could just say, hey, we know that you're positive, please do the right thing, please.
When you speak with people and, they know they have it and they know all the statistics that have, been going on for the last few months, they're afraid. So, they're, for the most part, they're doing the right thing.
Well, let's hope so, because it's the only thing we can do is hope that they do the right thing.
Well, right now, the numbers are going down, so.
Right.
We have to hope and pray
But our
that
numbers
they
are going up.
continue.
No, they're steady right now.
No, they're steady.
went up one.
They're steady.
We've gone up one since last week.
So it is
In the
an-
last week, just one.
So it's gone up. Okay.
So Claire, when they.
It's
when they
better
come up-
than going up 4.
Yeah, true.
Better than two. Claire, so, do I get that correctly that after they're off of quarantine, they all don't get retested?
No.
They don't?
Nope.
And-
Even, like I said, even some of the medical people, they're trying to get them back to work without retesting them, depending on, the facility. that they
Can I
work
ask,
at.
so I've been told that some businesses can require a negative test before they allow people to come back. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we wanted to, because we have to have a reopening plan for employees, and we have to have a plan in place if someone should get sick on the job. And as we've talked about, there's a checklist I'll put out, there's thermometers, but if someone is positive, we can require a negative test in order for them to come back. Okay.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
All right. I guess we're good on that.
Thank you.
Beth, you're up.
So, last week you had the discussion regarding, sorry, thank you. Last week, you started the discussion of changing the hours on voting day, June 15th. And it's 1 week away from the second phase of opening. So many of the poll workers and many of the residents in Groveland are uncomfortable coming out. We're currently offering, because the legislature approved it, early vote by mail. We are encouraging and hoping that people, if you are interested, put your applications in soon, so that it is a little bit of a time-consuming process. So if you can apply as soon as possible, if you're thinking of voting by mail, then the ballots will be mailed out. I mailed out about 150 ballots today of about 310 either early vote or absentee vote applications that I've received. I know you were uncomfortable last week changing the hours to a limited day. If we change those, the number of hours, and we
Beth,
offered it,
Hold the mic closer, please. Thank you.
if we changed the hours and offered a later evening for people who are going back to work so that they could get to the polls, and if they can still get here to vote, would that be more acceptable? If we made like a 12 to 8, so that anybody coming back from Boston, the traffic might be heavier with everyone starting back to work, they could still get here and vote. But offering a full 7 to 8 is difficult because of the number of people that I have available to work. A number of people are really uncomfortable coming back. It is a little too soon. It's understandable. So,
I think the full day is understandable by us that that's probably, you don't have the personnel to do that. And we understand that that's a long day given the circumstances. I think the discussion we had was more of how do we encompass that 8-hour time frame to get the
Maximum.
maximum amount of availability to people who are going to work or are coming from Boston, if they're going to Boston, or, trying to get those after-work hours available to people. 12 to 8 seems pretty good to me. I mean, if you can do 12 to 8, I think that that's a pretty good swath of time, given where people might be coming from and the hours that they might need to keep. Ed, what do you think?
Well, I think that, I don't agree with the cutting the hours. I know, and I understand that it's difficult to find the people, but people have it, they already know that every election, 7 in the morning till 8 at night. And I just don't want to see even one person not able to vote because they didn't realize that the hours had been changed. And everybody doesn't look at the town website, and based even upon information that I got today, somebody had questioned something that's been on the website for a while. Everybody doesn't look at it, and I just don't want to see somebody not be able to vote, come down at 7 o'clock in the morning before they go to work because they're working after 8 o'clock or whatever, and not be able to vote. I just don't think it's right. To me, it's trying to prevent people from voting by restricting hours. And I don't want to see anybody disenfranchised like that.
I don't, I'll let you talk in a second. I don't think it's limiting voting. I think there are options for voting. There's mail-in voting, there's different hours. Certainly we'll get that information out, but I don't think we're preventing people from voting. Bill?
I'm with Ed about, making sure nobody's disenfranchised from the system. Where I differ is, I don't think this is every year or every election. I mean, anybody that's been awake and responsive for the last 5 or 6 months knows this is anything but typical. And in this case, I think exceptions need to be made for public safety. I think 12 to 8 is a very reasonable accommodation to the folks that might have to work till 5 and try to get out of Boston. They can easily, should be able to, and I've done it many times, that's not a 3-hour trip. You should be able to get here by 8. I think that's a very reasonable accommodation on your part to extend it to 8 o'clock.
Or you mail-in voting.
Or your mail-in voting is another option. How long is that available to? When did that request have to be in by?
12 noon, business day prior to the election, so it would be Friday afternoon by 12 o'clock if a person submits their application. Technically, I can enter it into the system, I have to mail out their ballot, they have to mail back their ballot. So that's a mighty tight timeline with the mail. So people, if they are interested in voting by mail, should do it much before that. But that is technically the deadline, 12 noon on Friday.
So if we get the word out and we've got enough time that we should be adequate to let the townsfolk know that due to this unusual circumstances we're in, unfortunately, there has to be a slight change to the way the election is held.
Mm-hmm.
There are alternatives to you coming if you can't make that 12 to 8. You can vote by mail. You can request an absentee ballot. Again, very important to me to vote. I voted since I was able to vote, and I don't want to see anybody not partake in the process. But I think we've got to, again, be cautious on the side of safety here and be prudent in our decisions not to expose people.
Just to recap, what are the other towns doing for hours? It's limited, it's more limited than the 8 hours you're presenting.
They are much more
Some of
restrictive.
them are much more limited. The legislature offered to cut it down where it's a municipal election to at least 4 hours to.
So that we could, if you recommended down to 4 hours, we could do it just 4 hours based on what the
But
state
that-
recommendations.
That's really not realistic for the number of voters
Right.
that we have in Groveland, and the room will be restrictive.
Right.
The flow will be restrictive, so we need to offer at least enough time.
And you're confident that 8 hours is doable by you and your team?
I think so, based on the number of people that I've worked, and that's the most difficult part of it.
Right.
We don't have a lot of people who responded that they would like to work for the day, so, and that, I'll be keeping some people for the full day, or people have offered to stay for the full day, and others are not comfortable staying the full day, so I only have 6 poll workers.
Yeah. Well, as we found out the last meeting, we can't volunteer to do anything in town. So we would help, but we can't, so.
Well, and I would say, on a good year, we've struggled to get poll workers. I
Right.
mean, in a normal election, in a normal year, we've put it out multiple ways to try and get, apparently Tom Brady is joining us through Zoom right now.
Really? Get out. Did he fix his pants?
So, we struggle in a normal election. I would say normally this time of year, I put out a formal press release anyways through our PR company that does send it to all the newspapers with election and town meeting information. We will post the warrant tomorrow once the election hours are finalized. And again, it goes out, even though people don't check our website, it goes to Facebook, it goes to Twitter. I put out a townwide call. I've put one out every week for the last 12 weeks. And right in there, every week I say, the application, we have early voting information right on our website. I send the application to the 900 people who've signed up to get emails from us. So, you know, we can certainly run something on cable access for the people that don't check our website, that go to cable access. But newspapers don't cover us. There's nothing I can do about that.
Well, there's 3,000 or 4,000 people that are members of the Groveland Town Crier.
Right, and once we do a formal press
Right.
release, they post it on every town page that they
Right.
can. So, it will go out. You know, it's like everything. We can't find a way to get to every resident. They're always gonna say, I don't read the newspaper, I don't see the website, there's always an excuse when people don't do something. Happens even with taxes. Oh, I don't know they were due. They're due the same day every year.
Right.
But it's just a complaint we hear all the time. So I think if we do everything we can to get the word out, you know, the rest will be on the people to take a little initiative to say, oh, it's June, we haven't voted yet. Let me find out why and see if they can figure out the information. So,
We're in the middle of a pandemic, things are different.
and we've talked, you know, Beth and I have talked about signage and using separate entrances and putting some signs outside. So if someone were to come here at, you know, 8 AM thinking that they could vote, they'll see a sign that says voting 12 to 8. They could come back at 12 o'clock. So if they're normally here during the 7 to 12 window, there'll be plenty of signage around telling them 12 to 8 is the voting time, so they
Too
could just
bad our
come back.
digital board isn't working. That would help.
So they would just be able to come back in that window that it's open if that's what you vote on, so.
Well, I think if Beth is comfortable with the 12 to 8, I'm in favor of it. But I don't know if someone wants to make a motion of it.
Do you feel, quick question, do you feel confident that the 12 to 8 you can cover, you have the personnel, the resources to?
Yes. 'cause I'll have two
Just a
constables.
point of order. Beth, I think they can't hear you on that microphone. Is it working properly?
You have to hold it close to your mouth.
Okay. Yes, I do. I will have 2 constables, we'll have 2 wardens, and we'll have 6 poll workers. And with that, I think with some people working limited hours and some people working the full day, we should be able to cover it. We really have some amazing people in Groveland who come out to work the polls. And the last election, we had been understaffed, we had to look for new people. It took months for us to find the number of new people that we found. And some of those people are just not comfortable coming out, and I understand that. The other correction I wanted to make is absentee ballot and early ballots have different restrictions. So people would be looking for an early ballot application as opposed to an absentee.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
Then I'd like to make a motion that due to the unusual circumstances we find ourselves in this year, that we adjust the voting hours on election day to be 12 noon to 8 PM.
I will second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed. We might have had 3. Kathy? So now we're moving on to town meeting logistics.
So there's really not much new. The legislation has not passed the legislation yet to allow the change in quorum. On my call with the governor's office today, they said, so it's passed the Senate, it's been at the House. The House started taking some action today. So they're hopeful that it will go forward this week. Again, the governor's office has reiterated, they did it again today, that as soon as it passes the House, they will sign it into law, so.
Nothing like wait until the last minute.
And, you know, Mass Municipal Association represents all 351 communities, and they are obviously pushing them because, I mean, I think West Newbury might have town meeting tonight. I think their town meeting is this week.
I thought that was sooner than ours.
So
yeah.
there are communities that are having town meeting before us, and waiting. The other option we would have is, and it's just, I'm throwing it out there, is if you wanted to move town meeting, because we still haven't posted the warrant yet, we could do the Monday after the election and make it June 22nd. And by then, there should be legislation. It's totally up to you, or we move forward still trying to get 100 people on the 8th and hope that it either happens before then, or we hope to get 100 people. I've talked to Claire about the fact that we have digital thermometers now, the scanning forehead thermometers. We talked about that it's probably a good idea to scan people upon arrival at town meeting. I was gonna ask the fire chief if he had a couple of firefighters available to do that, in addition to giving out masks and gloves. I don't know if we'll get 100 people. So I figured I'd throw that out as one last option before I once the warrant is posted, we can't just change the date. So tomorrow is the last day I have to post the warrant. If it is an option, I mean, we could push it back. As long as it's before June 30th, we'll have a budget set.
So
So-
June 22nd is.
I mean, I would say June 20, I mean, I don't want to wait till June 29th, so. June 22nd would be an option, that we change it to that night and hope that the
Can we get
legislation
somebody
goes
do some
forward.
efficient stuff on Beacon Hill? I mean, they want us to wait, and they want us to wait, and they want us to wait, and then we're like, make a decision so we can make a decision.
I know.
I mean, I talked to Senator Tarr's office today, I should have asked him about it, why aren't
But
we?
it's past the Senate,
Right.
it's the House. Call Lenny
Call
Miro.
Lenny, I should have called Lenny.
So, I mean, that would be the only option we have is, I'm hopeful it passes between now and sort of next week. I have to look and see how.
What happens if we wait to make a
Meeting?
decision Monday? Oh, we
We
can't, because you gotta post
Once
the
I
thing.
post the warrant, we can't, we'd have to convene town meeting and adjourn until we had a quorum. So we would have to convene town meeting on June 8th. The moderator would have to reschedule until the following June 22nd and
Okay.
hope for a quorum.
Well, that's what I was wondering about that, because I've known we've had quorum problems in the past, a long
Right,
time
but
ago.
logistically, it's really
Right.
gonna be a little bit of a nightmare to set up and get
I
ready
know.
for it. So if we didn't have to do that, I mean, if there's a possibility we might wanna push it back, then we need to do that tonight.
I
Or
think
if you
that that's
wanna move
probably the
forward-
best case scenario, is just to push it back and hope that these people get off their butt and do the work they're supposed to do. Anybody on this side wanna say anything?
I don't know what to say to that.
I mean, by June 22nd, we should be well within phase 2 and just about to start phase 3. So hopefully things will be looking better, because phase 3 would theoretically start on June 29th if all goes well. So that would get us a little bit closer to the new normal. Again, it's just an option that, I mean, the school's open, that we can do it whenever we want. It doesn't even have to be a Monday night. You can pick June another night, but I'm just.
So West Newbury's doing it on a Saturday?
No, I think they're tonight. They were waiting, I think it was tonight that they were holding it, and Merrimack is June 15th.
So that would get us well into phase two and
It
a
would get
half,
us well into phase 2.
2.5, was mentioned in something.
I think people would be more apt to.
That
to come
seems
out.
like the best option.
I think that's our only option.
To go.
Well, or we move forward with it.
Yeah, but then we get there and we get 13 people show up and we gotta reschedule it anyway.
Right, I mean, if the legislation passes, then, again, I still would caution about lowering it, the quorum too low, because I think would be criticized.
The 2,
But,
quorum with 2.
oh no, they recessed, they had to adjourn town meeting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Why?
so
Because
that-
didn't have enough people?
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, theirs was June 1st. They rescheduled to June 27th.
Oh.
So they
Wow.
postponed, but they'd already posted their warrant, so they had to.
Oh, they had to
technically
meet and then
recess it.
cancel it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we,
The
so-
27th is a Saturday.
Yeah, so they are doing it on a Saturday.
So we know what we need to do then.
So, I mean, I would recommend that's probably, again, we'll
The
be
22nd?
halfway through phase 2, just about to start phase 3, as long as the numbers continue, people might feel more comfortable being
Just
out.
keep kicking it down the road. We'll just keep kicking the can until someone makes a decision. I'm
Right.
joking. I
As
understand.
long as it's before June 30th, if
Got
it's
it.
after June 30th, if
I got
it's,
it.
if we're not gonna make it, we need to file a 1/12 budget with the state and get approval on that.
We don't wanna
to
do
move
that.
forward.
No, we don't
I'd rather not take that
Yeah.
approach. So, I would say if that's what you guys wanna do, make a motion
Yeah,
and
someone
vote.
wanna make a motion on
We'll
that?
still post the warrant tomorrow, it'll give people plenty of time, and we'll just post it with the new date of the 22nd.
Okay. So do you need a motion?
Yes.
Still.
So I'll make a motion to move the annual town meeting to June 22nd.
I'll second that.
Do we have to say the time? You know the
Motion
time.
and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just have a quick question. You say that you're gonna hand out gloves, masks, whatever. You're gonna try to get the firemen to take temperatures. I show up, I have a temperature of 101. What do? You send me home?
Yeah, so that's something that we would discuss beforehand. and-
Claire goes out and
and-
tackles you.
And Claire would have the parameters, that if it's over, I think 101 is the threshold, to be honest
I
with
think
you.
it's even lower than that.
It might be, yes,
Oh,
so
yeah?
whatever the threshold
I
that's
think it's
set,
in the
if you're over that,
99s.
It's either 99.6 or 100.4.
I run low, I'm like
'Cause
97
Some
degrees.
people run a normal temperature of 97.
Yeah,
Right.
I run
I
hot.
do, I'm 97 all the time.
I'm probably more like 100.
What implications, what ramifications, what unintended consequences would that create by sending someone who's not as amicable as I am home? And you just said, you're not voting today, you're not being part of town meeting, sorry, goodbye.
well, again, I mean, but again, that would all be well known. That's why if we do it now, I can start advertising that, to enter town meeting, your temperature will be checked. And again, phase 2 may be different. It may be you no longer have, which I can't see, but it may be you no longer have to wear masks. I don't know. But we
100
would,
people?
we would put out, masks, gloves, and temperature. And if you have a temperature over 100.4, or whatever that should be, we cannot allow you to enter. Because even though we'll space people out as best we can, people might be you're obviously walking around, you're going to the bathroom, so we just can't expose the rest of the people there to that,
I'm
so.
in total agreement, but there's a lot of folks out there that aren't nearly as agreeable as I am, and I'm just wondering.
You mean understanding?
But don't we
That
normally
too.
have a
What would
constable or
happen under
police
those-
Right,
officer?
and the police usually, I mean, we're not
Yeah.
saying, we're not taking temperatures to vote on election day. This is town meeting, which,
Requires that you stay there.
there's a little bit of a difference, but I think that's what we can do to try and protect and make people more comfortable. I know that there are people that aren't comfortable coming, but as soon as I said, well, maybe we'll take temperatures, they're like, well, maybe I'll go, because it's one other level of adding protection to the other people that are there.
Right. Okay.
We've already talked about limiting the number of people on the stage, probably Mike and I, and then chairman of, if Jim even goes, Ruth or Jim for finance, Beth, and town council and the moderator. Like, that's all that would be, and that, just because we can't space out. So we'll space people as much, we have face masks, I mean, people can wear face masks. We have all sorts of paraphernalia for people to wear, but it's just one more level that we can do to keep everybody safe. So if people aren't happy, we'll have the police there, and they'll kindly show them the door.
Kindly.
Want to get it out there.
I agree, but, it's what we have to do. It's what we're
All
gonna
right, so
do.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
What we got here?
I think that closes all the COVID unless someone
That-
has anything
yep.
else.
You guys all set with the
Thank you,
discussion?
guys.
Thank you
Okay.
again for your
Thank
time.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Claire.
appreciate it. Thank you, Beth.
And thank Mike again for all those stats. So good about it.
All right, we
I'm gonna
have,
get Joe, he's out here.
all right,
Yeah, that spreadsheet, I look forward to it now every day.
I don't.
The last few days it's been good, because the number hasn't, it's just flat.
Thank you, Claire.
So you can sit in the middle seat here with the microphone. That one's clean.
Hello.
All right, so we have Groveland Housing Authority, environmental review and sign off. I think we start with
Well, so for those of you who don't know, this is Joe Hart, the Executive Director of the Groveland Housing Authority, who was with us tonight.
So I submitted my completion of the certificates for the environmental review that I had to do. Kathy, you submitted some as well, so two of us have completed the required training on that.
And I think Ed did previously.
Right?
Yes, and I did complete that as well. So, what do we need to discuss on the housing authority? Besides the information that you shared with us, which was,
Well, I think this is still a matter of getting the documents completed and signed. So I think
Right.
that's why Kathy wanted Joe here, so that everything can be discussed and hopefully finalized tonight.
Right. I mean,
And I have the document here for the gutters and downspouts project. I don't know if the chairman wants this, or,
so,
but typically the chief elected official in the city or town would,
I would've gotten it for you.
nah, he needs to walk.
so it's either the chairman of the board or some designee of responsible entity.
Yes.
Yes.
correct.
See, I did take the training, I did. Which is fine. I was going to suggest, actually Kathy be the responsible entity because she's been more involved with more of the criteria on this. I took the test,
It's probably chairman.
I took the, I took the required training, two-part. One, in case I did sign for this, and two, so I understood what exactly that was required of and what all that meant. But I think Kathy has been more involved with you directly and with the
Right,
state
yeah.
directly. So she has probably more information than I would have on it, other than me just seeing stuff in passing. So did you want to add anything, Kathy?
No, I think I've corresponded today. We went back and forth, and we determined that it is the categorically excluded CEST path that we're following, where you complete a statutory checklist, and then a project converts to exempt.
Correct.
Correct,
That's
so
my understanding.
no
but
environmental, no
HUD,
hearings, nothing.
Our HUD representative will not tell us specifically what route to take.
He hinted.
He says, no, the responsible entity needs to do that. So this is what I'm nearly certain is the correct form this time.
Okay, so,
I would agree with John. I mean, we've been back and forth, he and I, and also with Ryan at the state.
right,
And he strongly hinted at the CEST as the appropriate path. Okay, so it should look like a different document than what went through before. And we should be converting to exempt. No need to post anything, no need to have any public hearings.
right.
All of that is not necessary. Simple.
One issue I did run up against with this is that these forms don't have numbers on them, as a typical government form, specifically a federal government form would have, and that added to the confusion at times. Wasn't real clear what you were supposed to do. There are nuances of differences between these different forms, and it might not be, immediately obvious to someone like me. But
Yeah, government work is a lot of fun.
Correct.
Bill, do you have any comments?
No, yeah.
Ed? Any
No,
comments?
no, it gotta be done.
All right, so I would make a motion that we vote to allow Kathy to be the responsible entity because of the information that I had laid out before. Again, I did take the training. I am aware of what all this sort of means, but Kathy did have more in-depth knowledge of the particulars of the conversations with Joe and the state. So I would motion that the board vote for her to be responsible entity, yes?
Is it for just this document or going forward?
I would say just for this document. I don't know that that has to happen
I
indefinitely.
just want to
Yep.
clarify.
So is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ed?
Nope.
All good?
Oh, good.
All right, all those in favor?
Yes.
Vote for myself.
Go for yourself. All right, so this would be yours.
Okay.
So can I ask, since we have Joe here?
Yep.
So Joe, just to clarify, so you asked me to post some stuff on the website, that's for the future capital projects?
Correct, and there is a town sign-off for each year's capital plan.
Okay.
And Kathy is familiar with the process to a degree, but there's a website where you file your capital plans for HUD, and I don't know if you've seen that.
I did,
not,
it's just
but-
I didn't go into it because you have to be the person who's going to fill it out in order
Okay.
to go
yeah.
into it,
You have to be
so-
the responsible entity to even go into that,
You might
or
have
just a person that's
Yeah, you
completing
can't
it?
just kind of meander
grantee,
in.
probably.
Yeah,
But I think once you use the online, what it will do is it'll prompt you through, so you'll end up on the right path by answering questions like, are you changing the building in any way? No, I'm just putting a gutter on it. Then you wouldn't have ended up over on this other path with all the
right,
other
okay.
things. It should guide you to the correct form, and this does look quite a bit different and looks good.
So the plans, the projects that we posted were 2018, 19, and 20?
Correct, there's three years of capital plans there.
And then, so when would the board need to sign off on those documents? I know you have something going in the newspaper.
Actually, there's a waiver in place now because of the COVID-19 emergency. So I'm not sure exactly when, but it would be as soon as the state of emergency is lifted, then the town sign-off would be required. This is something specific to Massachusetts
Yeah.
alone in the country, but
So you have a 45-day period that's open now,
Correct,
that you
yeah.
have your call taking place, is that with HUD on July 10th? Or is that with you, that people can call you on July 10th?
that is an open meeting for
Oh, okay.
comment.
Okay. And then after that, you'll submit to us, or to me, to have someone sign the documents on the capital projects?
Correct, yeah.
And there'll be three
3 different years, yes.
different years, so 3 different things for them to sign and act on.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
That 45 days,
There's a public comment period of 45 days,
Yeah.
so, with any federal funding, and so we just wait the 45 days. I'm a bit behind on this one, but, obviously, but they said just go through the motions anyway.
okay.
Right, so the notice announcing the public meeting is on our website under the Groveland Housing Authority, as is the capital plan list that Joe provided outlining the 2018, 19, and 20 capital plan. So
Okay.
that's all available on our website, that I guess will be coming to
So
you.
I'll have to sign that when that's completed, or will a responsible entity have to sign it?
Either or, so
You
you as
are
the
the
chair,
responsible entity
if
unless.
you're still the chair on July 10th or whenever that comes through, then you would sign it, or again, you could designate someone
Okay.
to be the responsible entity.
Got it. Okay.
Again, the chief elected official or their designee.
So
Yep.
that's what I wanted to fill in this
All
line.
right, do we need anything else?
You're probably gonna have to attach the minutes.
Any
or
other
something.
comments for Joe? You?
Do you know what I'm saying? Because I'm
No,
not the
Ed,
chair.
anything?
I wanna make sure
Thanks for
that,
coming in, Joe.
No, but you can do,
I figured you would.
Denise, do we
Thank
have
you.
anything else for,
nope.
did you want to make any comments about anything else, or?
No, I would just say that.
Nice to see you.
Kathy Castronellis has been very helpful on this, and it's moving forward, and Denise has also been helpful, just getting the process.
Yeah, it's quite the
Going along.
process to go through.
I never imagined that you would need this kind of paperwork to replace some gutters and
Right.
downspouts. It's just unbelievable.
Or how many times you would have to submit that paperwork in order for it to get passed, so. We get it, but I think we're good. Thank you for coming in. I
Okay.
think you're on track now that that's
Good.
been signed.
It's all set.
And then when those other requirements come through, we'll look at those at the following meeting and get those signed off for you too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And then we have continued discussion regarding Sewell Street filling project.
So I'm gonna turn the volume, I don't see Bill Daly unless he's under a different name. I'm
You
gonna turn
under
the
Tom
volume
Brady?
back up. So you might hear some. Everything's gonna- So let's see. Bill Daly, are you on our Zoom meeting?
No, nobody?
Not that I see. So you might as well start, and if he joins on.
All right, so we have a couple of documents, one from the Conversation Commission, which has, I guess, requested some guidelines on what they would look for regarding filling of the quarry on Sewell Street. Everybody get a chance to read those requests, recommendations on the board,
From Conservation Board?
on our board about the Conservation
Yes,
Commission's
the
board.
recommendations that I emailed you from Mike Dempsey last week,
Okay.
and then I left you hard copies today.
Interesting reading.
Yeah, so does anybody want, or have any comments on that stuff?
And I do see that Mike Dempsey is on the call. So we tomorrow have to provide DEP with whatever conditions or recommendations you would like to see on this second half of the filling project. I included again the conditions you gave Bill Daly the last time around, back in 2018, so you could see what those general conditions are, whether you wanted to mirror those, keep many the same, and then you have the list of questions and concerns from Concom.
Can I have those?
Which ones?
The original,
It was the first thing
That's
in the
it.
packet, yes, that's it.
This one.
so if I remember correctly, and this was 2 years ago, that this was pretty comprehensive of everything that we laid out for Mr. Daly. And that some of that is repeated in the request from the Conservation Commission anyways.
I think the conservation is more responding to the additional filling
Yes.
rather than the original.
Right, but we can take this that we did in 2018 and apply it to the
Modify
new
it.
stuff. Which I guess is an easy way to do it, but I was looking at some of the requests from the Conservation Commission.
I
And
think only the performance bond and insurance were part of what you required last time.
yeah, that's on here.
Right, and,
Well, I mean, there's a list of 9 things on here. Well, 13 items that we applied to the first round of fill. That we can apply to the second round of fill, but it looks like the list of the Conservation Commission has more than, or in addition to those first 13 requirements, that they're looking to do more. Right, from the buffer zones,
absolutely.
like number 3, that's an addition, including like entire 100-foot. There was a thing in here about adding a chain link fence somewhere along the backside of the property or something like that.
Number 10.
And then something about paying for a full-time or a part-time soil tester. Was that in this too? Did I see that?
7 and 8 talk about
Increasing the testing
Costs.
ratio.
and that the applicant shall reimburse the town for services to have chemists and scientists and soil testing.
But I was under the impression somewhere along the last year or so that some of this stuff we can't enforce. Am I right with that? Like at a state level, there are state guidelines and that's what they have to follow, and if they follow that, then there's not all that much additional things that the board can do.
Right, so I think we've talked before that some of the stuff that DEP regulates, you know, we came right out, I think Kathy put right in an email to Mr.
Okay.
Fitzgerald if, you know, can we require every truck to be tested? And he said no.
Right.
I mean, there are things that we cannot impose on him. DEP regulates really the process. We're regulating the Groveland side of things.
Right.
So I don't know how much or any of this can be included. You know, should we submit it to DEP and let them make that decision? That's up to you all.
I would, personally, I would feel better that DEP look at these requests and tell us whether or not would that even within our purview to
Yeah, I agree.
review such requests, because honestly, some of this looks like a major cost prohibitive request by Mr. Daly's company, to be honest with you. Now, I know that the reason for this is to protect the wildlife and the Parker River and the aquifer and everything else around it. That's ultimately what we're trying to do, but I don't think we can supersede state law and state regulations with some of this request. Bill?
I just look at one thing, and having studied a lot of stats when I was in school, it seems that 0.5% is not much of a statistical sampling to have a very good outcome of what you're trying to measure. I was taken back by the small amount of sampling that actually has to be done. I don't think.
But that's, and I think I'm guessing at this, but I think that is one side of the testing, which is when it gets to the site. The other side of the testing is when it's picked up from the site. And I don't know what that ratio is either, but I think that that's a different number, right?
I would hope it'd be much larger in order to get a real true statistical analysis of the test being taken. I don't know of any test that can measure the outcome of a population based on 0.5% of that population.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just seems absurdly low to me that you could draw any kind of inference based on 0.5% of anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem abnormally low based on the number of cubic yards, but I'd be interested to find out if we can get the test results of where the soil's coming from, because again, I think it has to be tested on both sides of it.
It is tested on both sides.
Do we know what that percentage is? Is it 5% on the pickup side, or is it 50%?
0.5% again.
Yeah.
or
I don't have the
1/4 of
percent in front, it's right on that website. I looked at all those reports, they do the sample at the site,
Yeah,
and then they do the sample of, when it comes here, and they already are doing, the perimeter well is already in according to the state, once a year, those wells are getting tested.
right.
The only thing is, they just post this on that website, they don't send it to us, so I don't see a problem with asking if it can be sent to the Conservation Commission, the results.
Right, but I think in one of the last meetings, Bill Daly, I just sent him an email to see if he was gonna jump
Oh,
on.
okay.
But one of the last meetings, he said, I think he was gonna do the well testing 3 years following the project.
No, once a year it is, it's in the.
But it was only a certain time. They're looking for 10 years. Concom was looking for 10 years after the
Correct.
project.
They wanted the well testing on the site to go on longer.
Right.
We can ask the state that. I agree with your recommendation to send it up and see what Mr. Fitzgerald says, because he did a really good job when I sent him a list of questions.
Yeah, of
He's-
answering each one of them.
He's really, yeah, he does a very thorough job, and the chain link fence and the turtles, I kind of understand where they're coming from on that, to keep them from going out into the construction area and getting run over.
Right.
I don't think, is that really expensive to do? I'd like to send this to the state and
What
maybe.
if someone made you do that in the backside of your property and it was $10,000? So you'd be
Well,
like, well,
I know.
I didn't
Well,
plan on spending
so-
$10,000 on a turtle.
So I had two thoughts. One is to send it to Mr. Fitzgerald, and also, do you want to, at the same time, let Mr. Daly look at it and see what his reaction to it is?
I
Is
think
he's-
that's probably a good idea. Yeah.
Right, because I'd like to get information from both sides.
All I will say that was, so DEP gave us until tomorrow to file our recommendations.
Really?
That we've asked the extension, we asked for an extension because we were supposed to do it So he's given us till the 27th to file our comments. So I can certainly say, you know, this is the board's comments, and they'd like you to consider the Concom documents, but I don't know if they'll give us another extension for them to review and then comment back. I don't know that.
What happens if they don't give us another extension?
Then they can just move ahead and grant the permit on their own. So DEP has the ability to grant this process. They're looking to you for comments or concerns you have about it.
Well, that would be this, right, this letter.
And we want the bond, and Conservation wants the bond, so
Right.
that we want to do
Right,
again.
but is it what you've done the first time, or is it what Concom's looking
Well,
for,
I
or
think
both?
this is a baseline, what we did the first time around, 2 years ago. And then I think in conjunction with that, we want the state to review these recommendations from our Conservation Commission.
So
See
you
how,
want the general conditions that we issued on January 9th, 2018 to remain in effect through the whole project?
that
number
would be
one.
my understanding, or my wish. I don't know what anybody else has to say. But then also review this new information or this new request from the Conservation Commission and see if this impacts the state's decision, or at least it lightens our knowledge as to any of these concerns that may be coming forward. I really want to know what the testing is at the pickup place versus the drop-off place. Ed, do you have anything?
Yes,
I don't think I can find it for you right off the top of my
the
head.
Conservation Commission's 5 and 6 listed were what concerned me, and the perimeter wells, 10 years, and liability, insurance policy protecting the aquifer for 20 years. But is Mike on?
Yes.
I'd like to ask him to further explain number 4. Is that the performance bond for damage to Sewell Street, or is that for something else?
I think it's for Sewell Street.
That's for Sewell
I
Street.
think it's only damage to Sewell Street. As it says on the original
On the
document.
right, but he has on number 4 here, the applicant will provide an additional $75,000 performance bond for the town's protection. But I just
So he's
wondered if that was
Protection of
for,
what?
for Sewell Street, or was that for something else?
Mike Dempsey. Oh, hang on, I can't hear you. No,
I have a feeling it's like 1% at the site too. Just sticks in my head, but you gotta look, there's a link to that site. The number sticks in my head.
okay, Mike, are you there? No, I can't hear you, hang on.
Can you write you a letter, and we'll get it next week?
No, we need just a moment.
I know.
He's unmuted. We heard the speakers working.
And there's a lawsuit too? Did
That's
you-
what I understand.
Right, and that's concerning to me too. I'd like to know the status of that. I don't see why we should be making a decision until we know what that status is.
I don't think we can, and it almost implies that should
Okay.
the stream be.
All right, Mike, I think we got you now.
Perennial,
There we go.
then
Oh,
they would
but I
have
can
to
only
be
hear you
tried to go
here.
200.
Right, so I think we need that information. And we can't make a decision by tomorrow if we don't know the status of this lawsuit.
I don't think you're gonna get a court decision by tomorrow.
All right, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. So I think,
I can't hear him.
Oh, I just killed him.
You want to just have him call my cell phone and we'll put it on speaker? Would that be easier?
There we go. No,
There we
I
go.
got
We got you.
Okay.
Great.
anyway, on number 4, the reason that is just to increase the performance bond, because he's bringing in almost twice as much bill as what we originally asked for, what he originally planned to do, and so I think the commission wants to double the performance bond,
Yep.
to double the amount, to match the doubling amount of bill.
Is that for anything other than the Sewell Street protection that was assigned to the first performance bond in 2018?
Well, yes, I mean, ideally, I think, the performance bond should cover the entire project.
All right, 'cause so in 2018, it says R&D will supply the town with a $75,000 performance bond for any damage that may incur to Sewell or Salem Street. You want this other performance bond in addition to that to cover the same or additional areas?
You know, I would say to cover the entire project, so, you know, if he's required to do fencing and, signage, for the conservation restriction area, all that, I think you want to have that covered to make sure that it's formed.
So he's asking for an additional $75,000 performance bond,
Yeah.
not related to the
Correct.
Sewell or Salem
Right.
Street, but for other intangibles.
That's what it sounds like.
Can I just ask, is this particular agreement is still in place?
Yes.
So we're talking about making another agreement for the new site.
For the
We're talking
additional,
about,
We're not going to combine these two
we're
documents.
talking about reissuing that declaration from 2018 in addition to anything else that might be on this other recommendation.
Right, so the request from DEP was on the new fill being
That's what I'm
brought
trying
in.
to say, they need a new agreement.
So you can, but I'm assuming you could say to DEP, these are the conditions we issued on phase one, we'd like them
Okay.
to carry over to phase two.
Right.
Or you can issue all new conditions. Again, whether the DEP accepts them or not is a different story, but, that's what you're looking at
Do you have
now.
anything else?
Yeah, yes, that answered the question. But that probably should be just added in there to, for the entire project, as Mike had reiterated it. But is there any chance, Mike, of requesting additional testing done on the loads coming in?
That I put in, for number 8, where we would do some additional random testing of our own. So we'd be able to send somebody in there 10 times over the course of the next, 2 years, whatever it is, and, be able to at least get our own tests to make sure they match the results from the applicant.
That, is 10 times enough?
Well, I believe Mr. Daly said that the test costs about $500
Yes.
per test. So that's gonna add $5,000 to its cost.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Kathy, did you have anything else?
No, I like the idea of a specific number of additional tests, just as another check on, I know they have a third-party tester already doing this third-party test, but this also would give some additional information. And the well testing, if they could send that test directly to the town so that we don't have to follow a link, nobody knows where it is,
I don't know that they'll do that because I think
So they may just tell us to go to the
yeah,
website.
they'll tell us to go to the link.
So the question may be, can we continue the perimeter wells, the testing of them, for 10 years after the project is done? I think that would be something to ask of DEP. I think
I
that's
think this list has to go to DEP,
Oh,
to be
absolutely,
honest with you.
yeah.
So picking out just one or two is
No,
probably
I think we
irrelevant,
send the
but I
whole
think-
list.
I think initially, my recommendation would be to reapprove the previous conditions with the caveat that we want to explore the DEP's position on these requests from our town conservation commission, but that's just me.
And we're going to double the bond, 150.
Well, no, you need a separate bond, because the first bond is just for streets.
Oh.
It's just for damage to the roads.
Right.
So if you want an additional 75,000 for other incidentals, fencing, signage, et cetera, then you need to have an additional line covering, specifying what that performance bond would be for.
I just assumed it was for more money for damaging the roads, because you're bringing in twice as much fill now and cleaning the roads.
But that's not what Mike just alluded to. He stated it was in case there needed to be fencing or signage or things that weren't completed as part of the project.
Traffic lights.
Traffic lights.
What?
That's not a requirement of the current project, for the filling, you're talking just the fill. There's no traffic lights required to bring fill into a property.
It's turtle lights. So, do we need to make a motion in order to pass this?
You need to make a motion on something, what we're gonna submit to the
I'm
state.
getting there, I'm getting there. In order to reinstate this first set of,
Well, I would think those would still be enforced.
well, I think we need to tell DEP that we want to enforce these, continue to enforce these. And we want to take a look at these and get their feedback on the additional requests. Right? I mean, that's what we're gonna ask them.
If that's what you wanna ask them. Are you gonna submit this, though, as, here are 10 additional items that you would like to see happen if DEP approves them? Or are there specific items that you wanna move forward with? I guess, how do you want it to go, or just have DEP look at it?
I'd like to include the 10 that was supplied by Conservation Commission.
So the plan would be to submit the existing general conditions to remain in effect for the entire project, phase 1 and phase 2.
That would be my
And these 10 items that you would like to be
Additionally.
considered as part
Yes.
of the project.
And in that process, explaining further that number 4, the performance bond for the entire project, signs, fences, et cetera.
Mike, can you send me this in a Word document?
Yep.
Thank you.
I will.
Thank you.
So does someone want to make a motion to that effect?
So are we gonna send this whole, I think this whole letter should go though, because it kind of
That's what Ed
explains
just-
the reason for the fencing for the turtles and all.
That's what Ed just said.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'll make a motion that we send this forward to Mr. Fitzgerald for comment, for possible
What about this
inclusion.
piece?
Oh, this one you wanted, sorry. Okay,
You sleeping?
I guess I'm sorry. COVID. I don't know, what day is it? So do we want to just change this to 150,000?
No.
No, we want to separate, okay.
I think you
So
want-
let's redo this one
Make
the
a
same.
motion to.
Re-up this.
Reaffirm the general conditions from
Reaffirm,
1/9/2018.
I'll make,
And send the Conservation Commission letter dated May 22nd, 2020, identifying the 10 items also to.
okay. So O'Neill made the motion, I'll second it.
Is that what happened? Is that what you have written down?
I haven't written that part yet, so fine.
We'll give you a second to catch up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion, and we have a second, just so we're clear on who did what. Any further discussion? Yes.
I'd almost like the 4th paragraph to be item 11 or item 1, because it just seems to me that the amount of testing on a statistical basis is so inadequate on this side that I think it's something that may need to be addressed on its own, as opposed to just a footnote in the 10 requests. I wonder if we can get Mike's opinion on that.
So maybe adding to bullet point 8, paragraph, well, if we're gonna send the whole letter in,
Yeah, I would just,
then they'll read it, but you could add paragraph 4 to item number 8 to explain why you want additional testing.
okay.
That's fine with me. I just think it's so important that it should be one of the bullet points and not just a narrative to the bullet points.
Can you adjust that in the Word document you get?
Yeah, or Mike, you can send it to me adjusted, either way.
Mike, does that make sense to you?
Yes,
You know what I'm getting at, right?
yes,
Okay.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure you do.
All right, so, anything else? Everybody else good?
Yep.
All those in favor? All right. So that is done. Next up, we have Vote to the board, authorize and sign $181,685 general obligation bond anticipation note
Wait a
for.
minute, wait a minute. I've got something different.
You do?
Yes, I do.
You have an old agenda, that's been removed.
I didn't end up-
Pentucket Arts Foundation, the one I left you shouldn't have had that on there.
It was the back page of this stuck in between.
Oh,
Because I kept
you
looking
have-
at both sides, I'm like,
What?
No, I've got,
Pentucket Arts Foundation?
yeah.
That's been removed, they withdrew
Oh,
that.
yeah, you told us that.
Okay.
can I go back to reading?
You
I read
can.
your email. I read her
Let
email.
me, restate this again. Vote to the board, authorize and sign $181,685 general obligation bond anticipation note for fiscal year 19 capital plan. Radios for highway and police, police cruiser, fire EMS vehicle, and fire radio system.
Motion to
So this was, we issued this ban last year, with the rates being what they are in the market, we figured it's easier to just roll it over. It's only a 5-year note anyway, so we're just gonna roll it over another year and see what happens if we have more money to borrow with it. If not, we can either permanently finance it next year or just continue to roll it over for the 5 years. So,
So I'll make a motion to authorize and sign $181,685 general obligation bond anticipation note for the fiscal 19 capital plan.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Moving on to finance director's time.
I have nothing new for you.
Look at that. Right, selectman time. Kathy?
Yes, actually, I wanted to ask if we could, have the Comcast contract on our agenda at the next business meeting. I feel like this, COVID-19, everybody being home, relying so much on technology and phones, has, highlighted some of the shortcomings of our service, and I'm wondering, in the upcoming contract, I looked at the draft contract, but I'm wondering what is built into this contract so that there is a clear record of customer complaints and resolution? Because I don't see it. I myself got a few emails, and I did, as I was told, I forwarded it to the email address for the Cable Advisory Committee, because I don't know how else we're supposed to get these to Comcast. That's my question. And, because it seems to me that, from looking at the draft contract, that unless the person puts it in writing, there may not be much done about it, or at least from the contractual point of view.
I think even if it is in writing, there's not gonna be much done about it.
But at least we're supposed to,
I
if
know,
we
and
receive
we've
a,
been doing this for, what, when did I start that, 2 years ago? Denise, when I
correct.
got the email and posted it and said, you know, if you have complaints, send it to this.
Okay, but
Yes.
again, this is really put a spotlight on Comcast, and the reason, the people are so frustrated that you're told to call up, you're not told to write, and yet the contract says it's supposed to be in writing. But Comcast tells you to call them, not put it in writing. I'd like to see what's in the contract for customer complaint and what kind of resolution people should be able to expect, because it doesn't seem to be that clear. There should be a process, and there should be a consequence if these complaints are not properly addressed.
So I will
I'm
just
just
tell
saying.
you,
Good
Well,
luck
I
with
just
that.
want it on the agenda, that's
Dealing
all.
with a monopoly.
Yeah.
so we can't discuss much because it's confidential still with the negotiating discussions. So Bill Huey and Comcast have come to a tentative agreement, not what we were looking for. However, he went through the calculations and determined that the money that they're agreeing upon would cover the capital needs, and the payment of payroll and services for providing cable TV. It's more than we're currently getting. It doesn't burden the ratepayers more than they already are. So he had a tentative agreement and was waiting to hear back from Comcast on the final approval. I will say that in all my years working with cable agreements, the in writing part, in my experience, is supposed to go to the entity overseeing the cable contract, and then during negotiations, those are supposed to be provided if there were any that were not resolved properly. I have never heard of Comcast requiring complaints in writing, because I don't know who they would go to or how they would respond to them.
But I just like this on our agenda, because the contract does say that when they get a complaint, they're supposed to forward it to us. When we get a complaint, we're supposed to forward it to them. So I'd like to have this discussion as an agenda item.
Bill?
Will Bill be able to provide us with that draft for this next meeting? The draft of the tentative agreement?
I don't have a draft. I can certainly send you some of the narrative of what he provided, but it can't be discussed because it's confidential at this point, because it's pending negotiations.
Oh, I thought you said they had a tentative agreement, but it's
They
still...
have she's tentatively agreed to what he's been negotiating on our behalf. I don't have a copy I have some of his numbers that he provided. I don't have a tentative agreement. That's what he's waiting for.
Okay, all right.
Bill, anything for Selectmen's time?
No, we really haven't,
Okay.
I'm good. Wait until the next meeting.
Ed, anything?
I don't have anything.
All right. Old or
Can I
unfinished?
add one thing? I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank, sorry. I wanted to thank Tracy Guilford, Chris LaCory, Dave Tuttle. Mike participated in the Memorial Day virtual service that we held. So they all pulled together the video. It's on our website, it's on Facebook, and it's running on cable access. So I just wanted to thank those folks. Sorry.
Ed, anything for old or unfinished business?
No.
Bill?
No.
Kathy?
No?
I don't have anything either, so then we're on to correspondence. Minutes from April 27th, 2020. We have the minutes from May 18th, 2020. We have the executive session minutes from May 18th, 2020. Letter from Conservation Commission regarding Oakland Terrace, 733 Salem Street development. And then we have the adjournment. Next regular scheduled meeting will be on Monday, June 1st at 4:30. Can we
I
get,
assume you're continuing with the Monday.
yeah? Sure. Got nowhere else to go? Can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn at 6:16.
Second.
All those in favor?